"You're not good enough for our family," my mother-in-law sneered, ripping my wedding invitation in half. My husband stood silent as his sister declared I was too embarrassing to attend her luxury wedding. They had no idea the shabby hotel I worked at. I didn't just work there, I owned the entire empire. Diana Brooks had always believed that love could bridge any gap. She believed it when she married Nathan Pierce 3 years ago, and she believed it through every uncomfortable family dinner, every backhanded compliment, every moment his family looked at her like she was something they'd accidentally stepped in. At 34, Diana had learned to make herself small, to smile through the condescension, to pretend she didn't notice the way Nathan's mother would touch her arm with 2 fingers, as if afraid poverty might be contagious. The Riverside Inn where Diana worked nights was modest, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood where the paint peeled just slightly around the window frames and the neon sign flickered when it rained. She'd arrive there after dinner with Nathan, change into her simple work clothes, and manage the front desk with a warmth that made travelers feel at home. Nathan never asked much about her work. His family asked even less. To them, she was simply the woman their golden boy had inexplicably chosen, the one who worked at that little motel and drove a Honda that had seen better days. Nathan was a corporate attorney at his father's firm, the kind of man who wore success like a second skin. Tall, handsome, with the easy confidence that comes from never having to prove yourself. Diana had fallen for his smile first, the way it seemed genuine when he looked at her. She'd fallen for the way he'd seemed different from his family, more open, more accepting. She'd been wrong about that, but it had taken 3 years to fully understand how wrong. The invitation to Helena Pierce's wedding arrived on a Tuesday, cream-colored cardstock with gold embossing so thick you could feel it. Helena was Nathan's younger sister, 32, and finally marrying her tech mogul boyfriend in what was being called the social event of the season. Diana held the invitation carefully, already mentally planning what she might wear, how she might finally find a way to belong in Nathan's world. She should have known better. Patricia Pierce arrived at their home 2 days later, letting herself in with the key Nathan had given her years ago. Diana was in the kitchen, still in her work clothes from the morning shift she'd picked up when she heard the sharp click of designer heels on hardwood. "Diana, darling," Patricia said, though the endearment sounded like an accusation, "we need to talk about Helena's wedding." Diana wiped her hands on a towel, forcing a smile. "I'm so excited for her. The venue sounds beautiful." Patricia set her purse down on the counter with deliberate precision. "Yes, well, about that. Grandstone Manor is very exclusive. The guest list is quite sophisticated. Senators, CEOs, old family friends." She paused, her eyes traveling over Diana's worn jeans and simple blouse. "We thought you might be more comfortable sitting this one out." The words hit Diana like cold water. "I'm sorry, what?" "It's nothing personal, dear," Patricia continued, her voice saccharine and poisonous all at once. "It's just that Helena wants everything perfect, and you work at that rundown motel and, well, you'll embarrass us." Diana felt something crack inside her chest, but her voice remained steady. "I'm Nathan's wife. Of course I'm going." Patricia's mask slipped just for a moment, revealing the steel beneath. "Are you really going to be selfish about this? After everything we've done to welcome you into this family?" Diana wanted to laugh at that. Welcome her? They'd tolerated her at best, endured her at worst. But she held her ground. "I'll be there." The mandatory family dinner the following week was held at the Pierce estate, a sprawling property that looked like it had been ripped from a magazine spread on old money. Diana wore her best dress, the navy one she'd bought on sale 3 years ago, and held Nathan's hand as they walked through doors that never quite felt like they'd open for her. Helena was holding court in the dining room, directing staff and family members alike with the authority of a general. When she saw Diana, her smile froze, became something plastic and cruel. "Oh, good, everyone's here," Helena announced. "I've finalized the seating arrangements." She began reading names, table assignments, her voice bright and cheerful. When she got to Diana's name, she barely paused. Diana, you'll be at table 12 with the wedding planner and the photographer. I thought you'd be more comfortable with the working staff. The room went silent. Diana felt every eye on her, felt the heat rising in her cheeks. She moved toward where Nathan sat at the family table, but Helena's voice stopped her. Diana, table 12 is in the back, by the kitchen. Nathan shifted in his seat. Diana waited for him to say something, anything. He cleared his throat, looked at his plate, and said nothing at all. Helena, Diana said quietly, I'm family too. Helena laughed, actually laughed. Could you not make everything about you for once? This is my wedding, and I've worked very hard on these arrangements. Nathan stood then, and Diana felt a flutter of hope, finally. But he took her arm and led her to the hallway, away from the others, and when he spoke, his words shattered what was left of her illusions. Maybe Mom's right, he said, not meeting her eyes. Just this once, could you not come? It's one day, for family harmony. You know how they are. Diana stared at him. This man she'd married, this man she'd believed in. Are you serious? It would just be easier, he said, and the weakness in his voice made her sick. Helena appeared in the doorway, her expression triumphant. Honestly, Diana, we're trying to be kind here. Do you really want photos of you in your TJ Maxx dress standing next to women in Valentino? We're thinking of you. Patricia joined them, and then Nathan's Uncle Charles, and suddenly Diana was surrounded by people telling her all the ways she didn't belong. Patricia spoke of different backgrounds and incompatible values in a tone that made the racist subtext crystal clear. Charles mentioned the senator's daughter Nathan could have married. A proper match, he said, his eyes lingering on Diana's face in a way that made her skin crawl. They talked about her inferior job, her questionable family, her lack of proper breeding. They made her feel like something dirty they'd tracked in on their expensive shoes. And through it all, Nathan said nothing. He didn't defend her, didn't stand up for her, didn't do anything except look vaguely uncomfortable as if she were the one being unreasonable. Helena produced a new invitation then, cream cardstock with gold embossing. Here, she said, handing it to Nathan. For you. Singular. Nathan. Diana's voice broke on his name. He wouldn't look at her. Let's just keep the peace, he whispered. Diana left. She walked out of that mansion with her head high and her heart in pieces, drove home in her modest Honda and let herself cry for exactly 10 minutes. Then she dried her tears, changed her clothes, and drove to the Riverside Inn. The front desk clerk looked up as she entered. Miss Brooks, we weren't expecting you tonight. Diana smiled, the first real smile she'd managed all evening. I need to check on a few things, Grace. Is the quarterly report ready? Grace pulled out a thick folder. Just finished it. Occupancy is up 12% across all properties. The Dubai location is officially profitable, and the acquisition in Singapore is moving forward. Diana took the folder to her office, the real office, the one on the third floor that most people didn't know existed. The Riverside Inn was modest, yes, but it was also the first property in an empire, her empire. Diana Brooks hadn't always been poor exactly, but she'd understood struggle. Her grandmother had owned a single, struggling motel on the edge of town, and when she died, she'd left it to Diana. Diana had been 23, fresh out of college with a business degree and a head full of dreams. She'd poured everything into that motel, worked every position from maid to manager, learned every aspect of the hospitality business from the ground up. Over 11 years, she'd built Brooks Legacy Hospitality into something remarkable. 47 properties worldwide, from boutique hotels in Paris to luxury resorts in the Maldives. She was worth $3.2 billion, gave or take a few million depending on the market. Forbes had called her the humble mogul. Time had done a feature on her unconventional approach to wealth. And Nathan had no idea. She'd never told him. In the beginning, she'd wanted to be loved for herself, not her money. She'd wanted to know that someone could see her value without the zeros in her bank account. And then, as his family's true nature revealed itself, she'd realized she was conducting a different kind of test. Would Nathan stand by her when he thought she had nothing? Would love be enough? The answer, it turned out, was no. Grace knocked softly on the open door. "Why do you let them treat you like this?" she asked. Grace had been Diana's assistant for 6 years, knew everything, saw everything. "I kept hoping Nathan would defend me," Diana said quietly. "That love would be enough." And now, Diana looked at the financial reports, at the proof of everything she'd built, everything she'd accomplished while Nathan's family had dismissed her as nothing. "Now I know the truth about who he really is." She made a decision then, sitting in that office above the humble inn where it had all started. She wouldn't reveal her wealth for revenge. Revenge was petty, and she'd built an empire by being better than petty. But she wouldn't hide anymore either. She wouldn't make herself small for people who couldn't see her size. Then Gray showed her something interesting. Helena's dream venue, Grandstone Manor, the location she'd been bragging about for months, was owned by a subsidiary company. One of Diana's subsidiary companies. The Pierces had no idea they'd booked their exclusive wedding at a property owned by the woman they'd just uninvited. Diana could cancel it. One phone call and Helena's perfect wedding would evaporate. The satisfaction would be immense, immediate, and ultimately hollow. Diana had learned long ago that the best power was the power used wisely, not vindictively. Instead, she did something unexpected. "Call the Grandstone manager," she told Grace. "Upgrade everything. The flower arrangements, switch them to the premium orchids. The champagne, make it the 2008 Krug. Bring in the live orchestra instead of the DJ. Pull out all the stops." Grace stared at her. "You're serious?" "Completely." And Grace, "Do it anonymously. Include a note. Every bride deserves her dream wedding, even those who don't deserve the kindness." "You're too good for them," Grace said. Diana smiled sadly. "No, I'm just good enough for myself." The next morning, Diana filed for divorce. She'd already moved her personal belongings out of the house she'd shared with Nathan, had already instructed her lawyers to begin the process. When Nathan tried to call, she didn't answer. She had nothing left to say to him. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather, sunny and warm with a gentle breeze. Diana spent it in her office, working on plans for a new charitable foundation, something she'd been considering for months. She wouldn't attend Helena's wedding, wouldn't subject herself to that humiliation again. But she tracked the event through her staff reports, knew the moment the upgraded services began, could imagine Helena's delighted surprise. The ceremony was beautiful by all accounts. The reception was spectacular. Guests raved about the luxury, the attention to detail, the unexpected opulence of every element. Helena assumed her wealthy fiancé had arranged the upgrades, and he didn't correct her, probably hoping to take credit. And then, 2 hours into the reception, everything changed. The Grandstone Manor events director needed a final signature on some paperwork, last-minute authorization for the premium services. He approached the head table where the Pierce family held court, looking slightly confused. "Excuse me," he said. "I need Miss Brooks to sign off on these upgrades." Patricia looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "There's no Brooks here." The director's confusion deepened. Diana Brooks? The owner of Grandstone Manor? The effect was immediate and absolute. Conversations stopped. Glasses paused midway to lips. Helena's face went white, then red, then white again. "What did you say?" Nathan stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "Diana Brooks," the director repeated, pulling out property records, ownership documents, all bearing Diana's signature. "She owns Grandstone Manor, and the entire Brooks Legacy hospitality chain, actually. She's the one who approved all your upgrades. I just need her signature to finalize the—" But no one was listening anymore. Helena's fiancé was already on his phone, fingers flying across the screen. When he found what he was looking for, the color drained from his face. "Forbes," he said faintly. Diana Brooks, billionaire hotelier, worth 3.2 billion, started with a single motel her grandmother left her, built it into an empire. He turned his phone around, showing them the screen. There was Diana, photographed at a charity gala in a stunning gown, shaking hands with a former president. Diana at a business summit, commanding a room full of executives. Diana on the cover of Time magazine with the headline, "The Humble Mogul Who Started with One Motel." Patricia grabbed the phone, scrolled through article after article. Diana's success story was everywhere. How she'd built her empire through hard work and innovation. How she'd stayed grounded despite her wealth. How she was known for her generosity and her commitment to hiring from local communities, to giving opportunities to people others overlooked. The woman they'd mocked, dismissed, treated like she was worthless, was one of the most successful businesswomen in the world. Nathan's hands were shaking as he pulled out his own phone, tried Diana's number. It went straight to voicemail. He tried again, nothing. He left the wedding, drove to their house, his house now. She was gone. Everything that was hers had been removed with surgical precision. On the kitchen counter, the same kitchen where his mother had insulted Diana just weeks before, he found an envelope. Inside were divorce papers, already filed, and a note in Diana's careful handwriting. "I never needed your family's approval. I just needed your respect. You failed. P.S. I paid for your sister's dream wedding. You're welcome." Nathan sank into a chair, the note crumpling in his fist, and realized he'd destroyed the best thing that had ever happened to him. Not because she was a billionaire, but because she'd been someone who loved him when she thought he was better than this. She'd tested him, and he'd failed spectacularly. 3 months later, the full consequences of that failure became clear. Helena's marriage was crumbling. Her husband had married her for the social connections she'd promised, the influential family she'd bragged about. When he discovered that the Pierce family's wealth was modest compared to the woman they'd rejected, that Diana had more influence in one finger than the entire Pierce family combined, his resentment grew. Their fights were legendary, their impending divorce even more so. Nathan's law firm lost Brooks Legacy Hospitality as a client. Diana's business represented millions in annual legal fees, and when she quietly moved her contracts to a competing firm, Nathan's father nearly had a heart attack. 3 junior partners left, following the client, and the firm's reputation took a hit it might never recover from. Patricia tried to apologize, made public statements about misunderstandings and family complications. Diana ignored every attempt at contact. She'd learned that some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes, but the society that had mocked Diana, that had looked down on her for her simple clothes and modest car, now sang her praises. They called her gracious, humble, inspirational. They fought for invitations to her events, competed for her attention at galas, praised her business acumen and her charitable heart. Diana appeared on the cover of Time again, this time with a different headline, "The Billionaire Who Chose Invisibility and Changed Everything." The article detailed her philosophy, her choice to live modestly despite her wealth, her belief that character mattered more than appearance. It became one of the magazine's best-selling issues. She launched the foundation she'd been planning, dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs from humble backgrounds. She provided microloans, mentorship, education, and opportunities to women who reminded her of her younger self. Women who had dreams but no capital, vision but no connections, strength but no platform. And she opened a new luxury hotel in her grandmother's hometown, the place where it had all started. She hired locally, paid well above market rates, created opportunities in a community that had been forgotten by people like the Pierces. At the opening ceremony, she gave a speech about remembering where you came from, about lifting others as you climb, about the responsibility that comes with success. The hotel was named The Grace after her grandmother. After the woman who'd given her the first motel, yes, but more importantly, after the woman who'd taught her that true wealth was measured in character, not currency. Diana was named Philanthropist of the Year. She accepted the award in a simple black dress, gave a speech that brought the audience to tears, and donated the prize money to her foundation. She was happy, genuinely, completely happy, perhaps for the first time in years. And then Nathan showed up at her office. Security called first, asked if she wanted them to turn him away. Diana almost said yes, but curiosity or maybe a need for closure made her agree to see him. Just once. Just to end it properly. He looked terrible. Thinner, older, with shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. He stood in her office, this place of power and success that she'd built and seemed to shrink. "I was wrong," he said without preamble. "I'm so sorry, Diana. I was a coward and you deserved better. Can we— Is there any chance?" Diana looked at him, this man she'd once loved, and felt nothing but a distant pity. She stood, moved around her desk, stood tall in the space she'd created for herself. "You didn't love me, Nathan," she said calmly. "You loved the idea of me being small. You needed me to be less so you could feel like more. That's not love, that's insecurity, and it's something all the money in the world can't fix." "Diana, please." She pressed the button on her desk. Security appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Pierce is leaving," she said simply. As they escorted him out, Nathan looked back once. Diana was already turned away, already moving on to what mattered. She had a meeting with a group of young women entrepreneurs, women she was mentoring, women who were building their own empires with her support. The last image of Diana was her surrounded by these women, laughing genuinely, her face alight with purpose and joy. She was teaching them what she'd learned, passing on not just business knowledge but life wisdom. She was showing them that their worth wasn't determined by others' opinions, that strength came from within, that staying true to yourself was the ultimate success. They tried to make her feel worthless because of where she came from, but true worth isn't determined by others' opinions. It's built through character, resilience, and staying true to yourself. The people who judge you by your appearance will never deserve to know your greatness. And remember, those who stand silent when you're being hurt are just as guilty as those who hurt you. Never dim your light for people who can't handle your shine. Diana Brooks had learned that lesson the hard way, but she'd learned it completely. And now she was teaching others, building a legacy that had nothing to do with hotels or money and everything to do with empowering people to see their own worth. She'd been tested by people who thought they were better than her, and she'd passed by becoming better than they could ever imagine. Not through revenge, not through cruelty, but by being exactly who she was, unapologetically, powerfully, completely herself. And that, in the end, was worth more than all the billions in her accounts.